They didn't scream when the Empire's dropships landed. They rushed toward the wounded, not away from the burning. Isra, 3 burned in 3 colors, white from the surgical tents, red from the firebombing, and black from the orbital shadows that swallowed the sky. Dr. Elin Cade tightened the strap on her trauma kit and sprinted through the chaos, leaping over shattered concrete and charred alien limbs. The air stank of scorched biomass. A pulse round tore through a tent just meters behind her, ripping the symbol of Earth's medical emblem in half. Her breath caught, not from fear, but fury. "We're medics. This is a civilian camp," she shouted into her comm, ducking beneath a falling tower strut. No response. Static. Just screams. The Galactic Empire had always drawn lines. Military versus civilian, armed versus aid. Earth had honored those lines, even in its worst wars. But today, the Empire redrew them in blood. Cade found the girl beneath a slab of ferrocrete, Borean child, maybe 5. Her arm twisted at a grotesque angle, skin blistered, eyes wide with pain but silent. Cade slid beside her, lifting with careful, practiced hands. "You're gonna be okay, little star. I've got you," she whispered. She didn't see the drone until it hovered overhead. A triangular killbot, single blue eye blinking, scanning for biosigns. Not weapons. Not soldiers. Just life. "No," Cade mouthed. The beam lanced down, silent, surgical, final. The child disintegrated in her arms. Somewhere above the chaos, aboard the observation vessel Fury's Judgment, Admiral Kuro Voss watched through a dozen angled lenses. His expression was unreadable. The bridge officers stood rigid. "Confirmed. Medical Corps compound neutralized," said a technician. "Neutralized." Voss echoed coldly. "Clarify. Total loss, Admiral. No survivors." Voss gave a single nod. "Then record it." Behind him, the Imperial War scribe tapped commands into a crystalline console. The incident would be labeled as containment of bioweapon exposure from unauthorized human field tests. A lie. A tidy one. There would be no protests. No hearings. No mercy. Earth had overstepped, they claimed. Brought aid to rebel colonies. Treated the wounded when the Empire wanted them left to die. Compassion, they said, was a kind of rebellion. And now it had a price. Hours later, a single escape drone, a medical pod no larger than a coffin, crashed through Earth's orbital security field. It was burned, half-melted. Inside was a single blood-splattered recording. Footage played on every major Earth outpost within the hour. Medics carrying stretchers into open fire. Doctors shielding civilians with their own bodies. Children screaming, white coats stained in red. And, at the end, Dr. Cade standing defiantly, her hands raised, the universal sign of noncombatants. Her final words before the drone cut out. "We are healers, not soldiers. And we came when no one else did." Then light. The kind that ends things. On Earth, in the black vaults beneath Geneva Protocol Command, a man sat alone as the footage looped on his screen. He wore no uniform. Just a simple dark coat and a single tattoo beneath his eye, 3 lines, like claw marks. He did not weep. He did not speak. But when the clip ended for the 6th time, he rose without being ordered. Guards stepped back instinctively as he passed, though his hand were bound. At the terminal beside the vault, a woman in command whites entered one word into the system. "Activate Redgrave." The AI paused. "Confirm release of classified personnel previously designated as existential threats to interstellar stability?" "Confirmed," she said, eyes hard. From the screen, Cade's voice played again. "We are healers, not soldiers." The woman whispered back. "Then it's time we sent soldiers the Empire forgot we had." There were no trumpets when Earth declared war. No speech. No warning. Only a name was whispered, and stars began to die. The skies above Isra. 3 were still bleeding when Earth made its reply. Not with fleets. Not with diplomats. But with a file. Locked for over a century. Labeled Reaper Protocol. Sentient Level 8. Redgrave Facility didn't exist on any map. Buried under the frozen cliffs of Antarctica, it had no guards, No gates, just layers of silence and denial. It was where Earth kept its monsters. Inside, the lights flickered for the first time in decades. One by one, containment pods hissed open. The man who emerged from the third pod didn't look like a soldier. Gaunt, pale, hair grown wild. He stepped forward barefoot, chains still hanging from his wrists. His eyes were pale gray, like a sky drained of color. He didn't ask where he was. He just whispered, "Who broke the rules?" The officer beside the console stiffened. The Empire. They slaughtered medical corps. Civilians. The prisoner smiled slowly. A terrible, quiet smile. Then they've remembered us. Across the stars, in a far orbit near the Heliot line, an Imperial dreadnought, Abyss Crown, received a ping. A strange one. An ancient Earth code. One that hadn't been heard in 94 years. ID deceased. Origin, Redgrave Facility, Earth. Message, you started this. We'll end it. Before the crew could react, every console shut down. Lights dimmed. Engine stalled. No weapons fired. No screams. Just silence. When the backup systems finally flickered back to life 20 minutes later, the ship was empty. Every crew member, 2,400 Imperial soldiers, gone. No bodies. No blood. Just one word etched into the command console in perfect standard. Healer. Back on Earth, within a black site below Mars' orbiting command ring, the old commanders gathered. Not generals. Not presidents. They were the ones who had ordered the Reapers buried alive. "Do you understand what you've done?" one of them asked the white-uniformed woman who had initiated the Redgrave Protocol. Commander Vieira didn't flinch. "I watched Dr. Cade hold a dying child while they firebombed a hospital. I do understand what I've done." The room fell into silence. Another elder spoke, slowly. "You didn't just open the cage. You rang the dinner bell." They were 5. Not an army. Not anymore. The galaxy knew them only by their old call signs. Ashwalker. Last seen walking through a burning city, carrying a nuke he set off by hand. Wraith, never caught, never identified, only tagged by the aftermath of entire ships gone missing. Hollow Jack smiled in every court hearing as he described his war crimes. Acquitted. No one knew why. Shepherd, once a priest. Then he watched his flock butchered. The sermon he gave afterward ended in 12 planetary sieges. Cade, the only one never labeled a monster. She was their reason. Now she was ash. The Empire didn't see them coming. Their first target wasn't a military base. It was a prison ship, Galavorn, holding refugees Earth had tried to evacuate before the Purge. The Empire claimed it was a containment vessel. By the time the Empire realized it was under attack, it was already over. No hull breach. No escape pods. Just one open door in space. And every prisoner safe. Every guard gone. And floating in the ship's remains, picked up by an Imperial patrol, was another message. "You slaughtered our healers. So we brought back our murderers." Back on Earth, in the ruins of the Geneva Medical Command, they lit a candle for every medic lost. Over 1,700 candles flickered in silence. Then one more was lit, for those who would never be medics again, for those now unchained. The galaxy had always feared Earth's fleets, but they had forgotten what Earth feared, and Earth was no longer afraid. The stars were quiet at first, not out of peace, out of fear. The Galavorn massacre didn't make the news feeds. Not officially. The Empire called it a systems malfunction. Said the ship suffered a reactor breach. Said the refugees were evacuated successfully. Said the guards were heroes who died in service. But in the black market channels, encrypted threads, and whispered tavern stories at the edge of charted space, a different truth spread like wildfire. They're back. Earth brought the Reapers out of the dark. The monsters who stopped the Crimson Revolt with bare hands. No one believed it at first. The Reapers were myths. War boogeymen. Every child heard of Ashwalker, the man who lit a world on fire just to make sure no one touched Earth's borders again. But myths don't send messages. They don't return prisoners. They don't leave entire cruisers empty. On the capital world of Arcaris Prime, the Imperial Senate convened in emergency session. The Emperor, masked and towering in silver and blue armor, watched the chaos unfold from his obsidian throne. Earth has violated the post-war accords, shouted Senator Kren. Activating the Reaper Protocol is a declaration of total war. Then why? Came the cold reply from Admiral Salas. Did we slaughter their medical corps? The chamber went silent. Salas' eyes, augmented and ancient, scanned the faces around him. We did not kill soldiers. We killed healers. And now, Earth has responded. Another senator hissed, "We are the Empire. We erase threats. We'll spin this like we always do." Salas shook her head. "You don't spin ghosts." On the outer rim, freighter captains changed their routes. Civilian ships refused to fly near Earth territories. Mercenary groups that once bragged about defeating Earth in a fair fight went dark or disappeared completely. But the most chilling confirmation came from the Merc Group Iron Howl, infamous for war profiteering during the last Earth conflict. They sent a simple distress signal from a mining colony they had just taken over. Unknown hostile. One individual. Heavy casualties. We are. Then nothing. When a rescue team arrived 4 days later, the entire complex was silent. The only sign of life, a message carved into the rock wall near the command room. We gave you peace. You answered with fire. Now we answer in kind. In a hidden bunker beneath the ruins of Geneva Medical Base, Commander Vieira watched it all unfold on a flickering holoscreen. The faces of the Reapers, the reactions, the rumors, the fear. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just whispered to the empty air, "I hope they remember who you were, not just what you've become." Then she turned, stepping into the war room. 5 screens lit up, one for each Reaper, their signals scattered across the galaxy. Moving. Striking. One file blinked. Shepherd. Location, Vandrix 7, a religious colony known for its pacifism. Vieira's breath caught. Why there? The screen zoomed in, showing ruins, fires, and thousands of civilians being rescued. Not killed. Saved. No enemy, survivors. No Reaper in sight. Only a burned chapel, and the words etched in the altar stone. You taught me faith. You burned it down. Now I build with flame. Back in deep space, within the command chamber of the Empire's Blackwatch Intelligence Division, Director Vel leaned forward. "We underestimated Earth," he murmured. "No," corrected his AI assistant. "You forgot Earth forgives, but it never forgets." The Reapers weren't just killing. They were choosing. Striking symbols, not just targets. Saving innocence. Destroying power. And across the stars, millions watched, waited, whispered. What happens when monsters become messiahs? Earth was silent. The Reapers were not. And the galaxy held its breath. Space was cold, but the light of the stars, fragile as it was the only warmth the universe would offer anymore. Commander Vieira was pacing now, her boots clicking with a rhythm that matched her thoughts. Her office in the underground complex was dim, the flickering light of holoscreens the only company. She ran her hand through her short black hair and stopped. The message from Vandrix 7 still hovered on the screen. You taught me faith. You burned it down. Now I build with flame. She blinked, leaning forward to study the words again. The tone in the message was chilling, and more so, the fact that they had chosen a religious colony, a peaceful, vulnerable group, as their next target. She wasn't surprised. It was part of the Reaper legacy, the irony of it. They were supposed to be killers, warriors who followed their orders to the letter, yet somehow, in their quest for vengeance, they became a force of reckoning, a reminder to those who had forgotten their place in the universe. Vieira's mind drifted back to the old days, before the wars, before the Reapers had become nothing more than legends, whispers in the dark corners of bars and mercenary meetings, before she had seen their faces, haunting, determined, and unapologetically fierce. Ash Walker. The name still reverberated in her mind. It was strange, in a way, how much of a ghost he had become to everyone except those who truly knew him. But Vieira had seen his evolution firsthand. witnessed his transformation from a brilliant strategist to a one-man force of destruction. There were no longer rumors of his death. Not since the Gala Vorn massacre. And the other Reapers, each one born of tragedy, each one walking a path that led to something far darker than any of the Imperial forces had anticipated, were beginning to resurface. On Vandrix 7, the message was clear. Ashwalker had chosen to resurrect something sacred, something beyond destruction. His attack on the colony wasn't an act of violence. It was a symbolic strike, a call to those who had lived in comfort while others had suffered. For the galaxy, it was more than just a message. It was a warning. On the fringes of Imperial space, a dark transport ship coasted in the depths of the nebula. Inside, Rhea, the Reaper who once led a rebel squadron to victory against the Empire's iron fist, sat in silence. Her face, still youthful but hardened by too many years of conflict, stared out the viewport, her thoughts miles away. "Rhea," came the voice of her lieutenant, a gruff figure who called himself Slade, "we've got reports coming in. It's bad. They're calling it the Reaper Resurgence." Rhea didn't flinch. She had known this day would come. She could feel the pull of something darker and deeper than mere conflict, a reckoning. She stood, her boots heavy on the metallic floor, and crossed the room. "I knew they'd spin it," Rhea muttered, her voice low but tinged with bitterness. "It's the same every time. But it won't stop us." Slade paused, sensing something different in her tone. "So what now?" Rhea's eyes locked on the holoscreen, displaying the galaxy map, coordinates, Imperial fleets moving in all directions, whispers of threats stretching like chains across the stars. A deep breath escaped her lips. "Now we do what we've always done. We remind them why they fear us." Meanwhile, the Empire's forces were scrambling. A quiet tension gripped their leadership, each division trying to determine the next move, the next victim. But it wasn't the soldiers or the generals who had the true vision of what was coming next. It was Admiral Salas, alone in her dark command room, her back to the wide viewport that overlooked the vastness of space. The view was beautiful, peaceful even. It would have been easy to forget the war that had raged for decades, the blood spilled across planets, the cries of the innocent. But Salas had never been someone to ignore reality. She turned from the window, her gray eyes hard, staring at the holomap of galactic systems. "We need a plan," she muttered. "And I'm not talking about containment." Salas was no fool. She had lived through the conflicts, seen the rise and fall of empires. But the Reapers, they were something else entirely. They were unpredictable, yes, but also bound by a strange sense of purpose. "I need you to find them," she ordered, her voice sharp. "All of them. Ashwalker, Rhea, Shepard. Find out where they're headed next. We're not dealing with soldiers. We're dealing with something else. Something far more dangerous." In the depths of a secret military facility on Erebos 4, Shepard stood before a large, cracked mirror. His reflection seemed distant, broken, as though it no longer resembled the man he had once been. He had been a medic, a healer. He had stitched up wounds on the battlefield, saved countless lives. Yet now his hands, the same hands that had once cradled life, were stained with blood. For the first time in years, he felt no remorse, only cold, biting clarity. "Why do we fight?" Shepard whispered to himself. His voice was strained, almost lost in the silence of the room. "To save those who can't save themselves." He lifted a battered photo from the table. It was of him and his squad, back when the wars had started, back before everything changed. His fingers hovered over the photo, shaking as if he might tear it. But then he set it down carefully. Peace had been the goal. But peace was a lie. As the galaxy spun on, unaware of the storm approaching, the Reapers, each one carrying their own pain, their own fractured ideals, began to move. They were no longer just survivors of war. They were its embodiment. The question was no longer how many would fall. It was how many would rise. The stars blinked like distant promises, their cold light offering little solace to those caught in the web of war. Viera stood in the war room, her eyes glued to the central holographic display. The galaxy stretched out before her, a tapestry of conflict, alliances, and betrayals. She could almost feel the pulse of the galaxy, an intricate dance of power shifts and broken promises. It had all been building to this moment. The Reapers were back, and their message was clear. No place was safe. "What have you got?" she asked, her voice steady but edged with tension. Lieutenant Arlen, a young officer with a sharp gaze and quick mind, looked up from the console. "Commander, we've intercepted several transmissions from Reaper cells across the Outer Rim. They're organizing, strategizing. Their movement is rapid, almost coordinated." He paused, glancing at Vieira. "It's almost as if they know exactly what we're doing before we do it." Vieira narrowed her eyes. "We can't let them take another system." Her fingers drummed on the arm of her chair as her mind raced. She had faced Ashwalker before, and that man was a master of tactics, of turning the enemy's strengths against them. The Reapers had always been more than just killers. They were symbols, embodiments of a larger force, a wildfire sweeping through the galaxy. But something was different this time. Something darker. She was brought back to reality by Arlen's voice. "There's more, Commander. The Reapers, they've made a move on Vandrix 7. Her heart sank. Vandrix 7 was a religious colony, one of the few places untouched by war, where people still believed in hope, peace, and sanctuary. If Ashwalker had decided to target that, then this was more than just a tactical maneuver. This was a message to the entire galaxy. "Ashwalker," Vieira whispered. The man was a mystery, once a strategist for the Empire, now a ghost, a symbol of rebellion. His actions defied logic, but his impact was undeniable. He had been the catalyst for everything that had come to pass, a man who could see the fault lines in the universe and exploit them to create chaos. "What's the status of the fleet?" she asked, standing and pacing. "We're assembling it now," Arlen replied. "But it's slow. We don't have enough ships to secure all sectors at once. The Reapers have the advantage of stealth, speed, and unpredictability." Vieira clenched her jaw, frustration rising within her. The Empire had been spread thin for years, fighting multiple fronts. Now, with the Reapers emerging from the shadows, it felt like they were being torn apart. "We can't afford to wait," Vieira said decisively. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to take the fight to them." Vandrix 7 was a world of blue skies and endless fields of green. The colonies were small, peaceful, isolated from the turmoil of the larger galactic conflicts. But that peace had just been shattered. Ashwalker watched from a cliffside as the first of the Imperial ships broke through the atmosphere. He didn't flinch. His expression was calm, but his mind was elsewhere, calculating, analyzing. There was a part of him that still mourned the innocence of these places, the people who had done nothing to deserve the war that was coming to their doorstep. But there was no room for weakness, not anymore. A soft voice cut through the quiet, and Rhea stepped beside him, her silhouette framed against the backdrop of the setting sun. "We're ready," she said. Ashwalker nodded, his gaze still fixed on the horizon. "We'll strike fast, hit them where they least expect it. If we show them our hand too soon, they'll adapt. They always do." Rhea's lips curled into a faint smile, the same dark determination in her eyes that had carried her through the countless battles they'd fought together. "And if they adapt?" she asked. Ashwalker's eyes flicked to her, his expression unreadable. "Then we adapt faster." He turned to face her fully. "You know the plan. Keep them distracted. Keep them guessing." Rhea gave him a short nod, and then, without another word, she turned and disappeared into the shadows, vanishing as effortlessly as she always did. Ashwalker remained where he stood, his thoughts a storm of conflicting emotions. He had never been one to indulge in sentimentality, but there was a quiet, unshakable weight on his shoulders. The galaxy was on the brink of something far larger than a mere rebellion. His actions would ignite it, and he knew that once the flames caught, there would be no stopping it. Back on the Imperial flagship, Vieira sat in the command center, her gaze locked on the holographic map before her. The fleet was ready, and the countdown had begun. "Commander, we've located their primary staging area," Arlen said, his voice tight with urgency. "They're not trying to hide anymore. They want us to find them." Vieira's fingers hovered over the controls. "They're playing us. They want us to think they're vulnerable, so we rush in unprepared. But we'll do the opposite. Move in slowly. No rush. The plan was simple. Lure the Reapers into a trap. But as Vieira looked around the room at her officers, young, experienced, tired, hopeful, she knew this might be their last battle. "We'll strike at the heart of their operations," she said, her voice steady. "We end this here, before it spreads further. No more games. No more illusions." She turned to face the view screen, her expression hardening. "We'll make them regret ever rising against us." The darkness of space seemed to hold its breath as both sides prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Ash Walker, the master tactician, had chosen this moment, this battlefield, because he knew it would be decisive. This wasn't just about destroying fleets or winning battles. This was about forging the future in the fire of conflict. And Vieira, the Empire's last hope, stood at the edge of a precipice, knowing that the choices they made now would determine the fate of billions. The tension in the command room was palpable. The silence hung heavily, broken only by the faint hum of the consoles and the steady rhythm of breath from those gathered. Vieira stood in front of a hollow display, her gaze unwavering as she studied the Reapers' projected movements. They had made their move, their forces had assembled at Vandrix 7, and everything about this battle felt different. The quiet before the storm was suffocating. She could feel the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders, the choices she would soon make echoing in the fates of millions. "Lieutenant Arlen's status report?" she asked, her voice calm yet laced with the pressure of command. Arlen, standing at his station, glanced at her, his face grim. "All units are in position. The fleet's ready to engage. We've locked onto their fleet formations." It's exactly as we thought." Vieira nodded. "They want us to think they're just a scattered band of insurgents. But Ash Walker has never been that simple. He's baiting us into a trap, and we'll walk right into it." A faint murmur of agreement rippled through the room, but no one dared break the heavy silence that seemed to press against them like an invisible weight. The warships were assembled, sleek, deadly, and ready for a fight, but every officer knew that this wouldn't just be about firepower. The Reapers had always been more than just a military force. They were a force of nature, unpredictability incarnate. "Commander," said Admiral de Vere, a seasoned officer with decades of experience, his voice cutting through the room's tense atmosphere, "we can't afford to be too cautious. We need to strike fast. If we let them dictate the pace of this conflict, they will carve us apart." Vieira turned her sharp eyes toward him. "I know, Admiral. But we need to make sure this isn't just a distraction. We need to find their true objective. Don't forget, Ashwalker's goal isn't to win every battle. It's to draw us into a war of attrition." She paused, her thoughts momentarily drifting back to her first encounter with the Reapers. Ashwalker's ability to read his enemies like open books had always unsettled her. She had fought his tactics before, but now it was personal. The fleet was ready, and the time for hesitation was gone. Vieira straightened her back, locking eyes with each officer in the room. "Deploy. We're not waiting any longer. Prepare the first strike. We hit them hard, right in the heart. Don't let them pull us into their trap." The command was given. The fleet launched into the void. Vandrix 7, the peaceful planet Vieira had sworn to protect, was now a battlefield. From the bridge of the Imperial flagship, Vieira could see the planet's calm surface growing larger, slowly enveloping the viewscreen. The moon hung high above, watching with its cold, indifferent gaze. Vieira could almost feel the weight of the billions of lives below, depending on her choices, as the Reaper fleet moved closer to the planet's atmosphere. On the opposite side of the battlefield, Ashwalker stood in the command center of the Reaper flagship, watching his own fleet spread out across the space surrounding Vandrix 7. His expression was unreadable, but beneath it, a storm of thoughts and emotions churned. He had been waiting for this moment, this very conflict, for far too long. "We're in position," a voice called from behind him. Rhea stepped forward, her eyes sharp, her stance composed. "They've launched. They're coming for us. They're not holding back." Ashwalker's lips curled into a small smile. "Good. Let them think they're in control. We'll teach them the cost of underestimating us. The first volley of fire hit, and the space between the Imperial fleet and the Reapers erupted in a brilliant burst of energy. Ships from both sides fired their weapons, lasers streaking across the void, tearing into hulls and sending fragments of ships spiraling into the empty expanse of space. The clash was brutal, immediate, and overwhelming. Viera watched as her flagship returned fire, shaking with the force of every impact. The sheer noise of battle, the sound of energy weapons slicing through space, echoed in her ears despite the silence of the void. She felt the tension in her chest tighten as the chaos unfolded in front of her. "Focus fire on their flagships," she commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. "We take down Ashwalker's fleet, and the rest will fall into line." The fleet responded with precision. Waves of fire rained down on the Reaper ships, turning the space around Vandrix 7 into a battleground of blazing lights. The Imperial forces were well trained, a cohesive force of professionalism and discipline. Yet, the Reapers were something else entirely. Ashwalker's forces scattered into unpredictable formations, hitting and fading before the Imperial ships could lock onto them. His ships seemed to appear out of nowhere, their stealth technology and lightning-fast maneuvers a testament to years of careful planning. "Admiral, we're losing control," Arlen shouted from his station. "They're too fast, too unpredictable." Viera's mind raced. I knew it. Her suspicions had been right. The Reapers had never been a conventional force, and now their elusive tactics were tearing apart the careful plans of the Empire. This was exactly what Ashwalker wanted, to force them into a fight they could never win. As another wave of enemy fire exploded across the bridge, a sudden realization hit her. They weren't just fighting for Vandrix 7, they were fighting for the very soul of the galaxy. Ashwalker wasn't after territory or victory. He was after chaos, after testing the limits of the Empire, breaking its resolve, and forging something far darker in the flames of conflict. "Commander," Arlen said urgently, "they're pulling back, but it's a trap. They're drawing us in." Viera's heart skipped a beat. The Reapers were letting them think they had the upper hand. It was a diversion, a strategy designed to lure them into a deeper engagement, one where they would be vulnerable. "Brace for impact," she shouted, as the ship's alarms blared. The battle raged, neither side giving an inch. But in the dark heart of the conflict, Viera realized the truth. Victory would not come through brute force. This was a war of minds, a test of wills, and Ashwalker was ready to break them piece by piece.